We are in chapter 4. We're discussing the garments of the soul. And we understand the garments of our soul, in essence, is Torah. Torah and the commandments, those are the garments. Meaning, technically, the garments of the soul are the thought, speech, and actions of you, of the person. But the content of that garment is Torah, her commandments, the mitzvahs, or doing something for the sake of heaven. Meaning something might not be technically one of the 613 or one of the 10,000 additional rabbinic, or even not a custom, but I'm doing this for the sake of God. So that also is part of the garments of the godly soul. And that's it. It's not Torah, it's not the commandments, it's not a biblical, rabbinic, custom, it's not for the sake of heaven, it's not serve God in all your ways. No, it's none of that. It's not the garments of the godly soul. It's the animal soul taking over. But if it's Torah, the commandments on any level, including, as I said, rabbinic, customs, serving God in all of your ways, then this is the garments of the godly soul. And we said, once we established that the Rebbe from that point until the rest of the chapter was, in a sense, going through a series of like 5, we want to give a loose framework, questions and answers to more explore and understand. And this is very foundational to us. The concepts of this chapter are foundational to our service and to most of Tanya and Hasidic thought, because this is how my soul expresses herself. This is what's going on. So the first question we asked is, which might seem like a random question, but of course the answer made it a very pointed question. Well, what's higher? What's greater, the soul or her garments? And we said, well, that's not a funny question because the answer is actually the garments. And of course, we discussed that at length. Just recapping, bottom line, the garment, Torah, is still one with God. The soul is from God. Actually, the soul is embedded in God's essence. Actually, Torah is embedded in God's essence. Actually, the soul is embedded even deeper in God's essence. But the soul emerged to become an identity, a soul. And therefore, there's a certain degree of separation. So when the soul is dressed in her garment, which is higher because it never left its original existence, which is higher because it's still one with God, the soul ascends to that level of relationship. So the garment is higher, which is beneficial. And therefore, every time we're dressed in our garment, we're getting closer to God. And the second question, we then said, well, is this the real deal? We're saying when we study Torah, do the commandments, God is one, we and God, Torah, we're all one. This is really God? This is really his will and wisdom? It's come down all the way to planet Earth. You know, the Torah that we have talks about wool and linen. There's wool and linen above in God's will and wisdom. It talks about negative things, murder, theft, horrific crimes. That's what's going on in heaven. That's God's will and wisdom. So this isn't really God. This is, became diluted into our world. And the Rebbe says, no, it's actually really God. Even though technically we cannot grasp God, God is beyond any grasp, but God constricted himself within the letters and concepts of Torah so we can grasp him. So literally, the ungraspable God is contained within Torah and therefore contained within our brainwaves. And this is sort of exactly where we're up to in the discussion. And the Rebbe says, for you to understand that we mean this is literally him, the constriction of God to be within Torah is a constriction that we compare to water. Torah, for many reasons, is compared to water. Water is the most essential thing, in a sense, we need for life. Torah is our life. But also, water has a certain nature. The nature of water, unique to water in our physical world, is it will always flow downward. Meaning, of course, as we know, if water's on a tilt, it's going to flow down. It's going to spill on your floor or wherever. If water's on a higher plane, and then it could be like, a mountaintop that's melting the ice, it's not going to stay there. It's going to flow. That is the nature of water. It's not the nature of other things. Earth is stationary, Wind moves, but doesn't have this natural need to descend. Fire ascends. But in the natural world, water has this quality that it's always seeking the lower plane. If there's a way to get down, it will. So that's why it's very symbolic of descent. At the same time, though, and this is very significant for the point the Rebbe is trying to make, as water flows down, it's the same water. Meaning you had the water on your counter and it spilled and it rolled down, it got on the floor. It's the same water. You had the water on top of the mountain or the hill and it rolled down. It's the same water. And that, of course, is the point the Rebbe is making. Water flows down, but it doesn't change. You know, its molecular composition, we all know, H2O. Well, it's the same H2O up there and down there. Didn't change. And that's a very unique phenomenon. Because when we normally think of constriction, and we think of the classical parables given for constriction, constriction always connotes a change. And we talk about this all the time in Hasidic thought, because God constricted himself for creation. Is that the constriction of water? No, it is not. The two most common parables for God's constriction of self, and based on that for any other type of constriction we're talking about, is the sun and the rays, or a teacher and a student. And throughout Hasidic thought, very often we can bring the parable of a sun and the rays, or a teacher and student. Right now we're in the section of our chitzas of Shara Yichud V'Amunah. We're going to talk all the time about the sun and her rays. This is a classic parable of Hasidic thought for God's constriction to create. We'll discuss this in Tanya. The sun and her rays. What is the parable of the sun and her rays? Well, there's a sun, planet sun. It's 90 some miles away, 90 some million miles away from planet Earth, right? And yet it's warming our world. It's making our world habitable. The only way we can exist and live, there can be life, is because of that relationship to the sun. If we were closer than some 90 million miles, we'd be too close, like the planet went over, get burnt up. If we were further away, like the planet the other direction, be too cold, wouldn't survive. But we're in that perfect sweet spot, exactly 90 million. I think someone told me recently it's actually 93 million, miles away. And therefore we have the light, the heat, the warmth, the energy. Life can exist. But we're not getting it from the sun because she's 93 million miles away. We're getting it from the rays. So when these rays travel those 93 million miles, what happens is they get weaker. Obviously, that's what happens if you're 93 million miles away from the sun. And that's very good, because if they were any stronger, life would not exist. So we have the planet sun, which is the source of all the energy, but we are not getting the sun directly. We're getting the rays, which is a tremendous diminishment of that energy. And that's exactly what we need, because if it wasn't diminished, it would be too hot to handle. So that parable, which is a very easy one to understand because it's very grounded in our this world reality, we can all understand what I just said, is classically how we speak of God constricting self. That's the one Hasidus loves the most. There's another one that Hasidus doesn't use as frequently, referencing God, but we also use it for other concepts of constriction, which is a teacher to a student. When the teacher is teaching the student, the teacher can't just pour all the knowledge he or she has on the student, because that would be like, whoa, information overload, and the student won't understand. So the teacher, a wise teacher, has to constrict their knowledge, what they want to give over to the student, and find what the student has the capacity to understand. And that's the knowledge the teacher conveys to the student. So sun to rays, what Hasidus loves the most, or teacher to student, which for reasons I won't go into because that would be a very tangential discussion, Hasidus doesn't use as much. But both of them are talking about a very big mega power that gets smaller to fit into the recipient's ability to receive. And that's not water. Water is not the metaphor we usually use for constriction, because water is not constricting. Water is not getting smaller. Water is not diminishing. We're not changing its molecular construction. All it's doing is moving to a lower plane. And that's the point the Rebbe is making here. When we say God constricted himself in Torah, it's not like God's constriction in creation. God constricted himself in creation, absolutely. And that's the sun and the rays. But in Torah, it's not the sun and the rays, because we have the real thing here. We have God's will and wisdom, absolutely. Now you could say, that makes no sense. How can a God so big fit into a world so small? That's a great question. That's what we said is God's unbelievable humility in squashing himself without diminishing anything. And that's a critical point the Rebbe is making, because it's not when I learn Torah, I'm connecting to a watered down, pale vision of. No, it's the real thing. If you remember the parable I gave last week, which obviously is not any Hasidic source, one of my students came up with it, but I thought it was brilliant, was, remember we said watching the movie on this huge theater screen? And she didn't say this because it was a few years before, but like watching it on your cell phone. But it's the same movie. Nothing changed. The colors, the sound, it's all the same. It's just smaller. That is what God did. He squashed himself. He didn't diminish himself. He squashed himself to put the infinite will and wisdom of God in finite words, in letters, in ink on parchment, in physical concepts, in concepts that are dealing with negative situations. All this is a tremendous squashing, but it's squashing him. So we are in chapter 4. We are on the second page of chapter 4, which should say page 16 if you are looking inside. And we are about 12 lines from the top of the page. And therefore, because of everything we said above, again, what we said above was, wait a minute, God's limitless. All these quotes that God cannot be grasped, but he is. And we said, how? Because he has tremendous humility. That's what our sages say. In the place you find the greatness of God, there you find his humility in squashing himself. And how do we see he squashed himself? Because he took himself that's so high and his will and wisdom, which is one with him, and he squashed it into 613 commandments and all the laws and all the combinations of letters of all the scriptures of Tanakh and all of the written Torah and all of the oral Torah, all of the Midrashim, all of the Talmud, all of Torah. Why did he do this? In order that we could connect to him. I think this is an incredible concept, because when I read these words, I feel so much love. Throughout this chapter, actually, it's a chapter that I really love this chapter, because I really, really feel God's love for us in this chapter. I feel very loved when I think how God is so huge. I don't have to convince myself he's huge, right? He's God. He's infinite. He's a creator. He is all, and all is him. And he put himself in letters, in a finite number of letters that form a very specific finite amount of words. Finite number of ink is used. Concepts. The quantitative dimension finite. The qualitative dimension finite. Why? That every soul in a body can grasp it, can grasp as much as is possible by us doing the actions of the Torah and the commandments, by our speech being the speech of God of the Torah and commandments, by our thoughts being the thoughts of God's thoughts of the Torah of the commandments. And when we do this, all of our soul powers are engarbed in these three garments of him, of his will and wisdom, which is him. So God has so much love for us that it's not easy. It's probably quite painful to fit infinity in such a finite box. But he's like, I want a relationship with you. And if I'm infinite and you're finite, well, it's impossible. We can never have a relationship. So what's God's choice? To make me infinite? That would defeat the whole purpose of creation. So he has to put himself into something finite. But he doesn't want to diminish himself. He could. That's how he made creation, by diminishing himself. He does it. But if he diminished himself, then I wouldn't have a relationship with him. I'd have a relationship with a diminished version of him. But he wants me to have a relationship with him. So in creation, he's diminished. No problem. But in Torah, he is exactly him. The infinity of him, the infinity of his will, the infinity of his wisdom within the finite dimensions of Torah. Why? As the Rebbe says, Shekol haneshama aruch v'nefesh b'guf ha'adam. So every level of soul in a body, not just this floating soul, which anyway would have no ability to grasp the infinity of God. This soul's got squashed herself. She's in a body. She's on planet Earth. Tucha lasigam bedata. Should be able to grasp God's will and wisdom in her mind. Ulakaiman. And to fulfill them, to fulfill God's will and wisdom. As much as one can fulfill God's will and wisdom. In our action, in our speech, in our thought. And through this, all of our soul powers will be engarbed in these three garments of Torah, which means engarbed in him. That is the amazing beauty, the gift, the enormous hug God is giving us every time we learn Torah or do a commandment. Now, the metaphor of a hug, which is not mine, it's the Alter Rebbe's, he will say in chapter 40 something, yeah? So we got a number of chapters down the road, but it's embedded in these concepts right here. We will unpack it in 40 chapters. The idea is here, that whenever we're doing a mitzvah, whenever we're doing commandment, it's a body-to-body embrace, me to God. Whenever I'm studying Torah, it's even deeper than that. It's a kiss. It's an intimate kiss. It's a breath-to-breath kiss. That's how deep is the bond, not between me and some pale version of, between me and God. Because God wants that relationship with me. And because he wants that relationship with me, he's willing to constrict his infinity in the finite dimensions of Torah. V'lachei, and therefore, as we were discussing, nimshal haTorah l'mayim. Torah is compared to water. Why? Why is Torah compared to water? Now, of course, Torah is not only compared to water. From other perspectives, Torah is compared to fire. But Torah is classically, in many, many sources, many Torah sources, compared to water for various reasons. But the Rebbe here is pulling out what Chassidus would consider one of the most critical factors defining water. What is unique about water? Just as water flows, if it's in a higher place and there's a way to go down, the water will go down. That is the unique nature of water, right? So obviously, any liquid that's water-based is going to do this as well because of this unique nature of water. Kach haTorah. So just as water has this almost like we call it need, if we want to make it sound human, this need to go to a lower dimension, but at the same time, when the water flows, it's the same water. The water didn't change. The water didn't change her molecular construction. It's still the same H2O. It's still water. Well, that is Torah. Kacha Torah yardam imkom kivayda. So too Torah descended from the place of her honor. What do we mean by the place of her honor? Torah is the will and wisdom of God. We have said that many times before. We will say it many times again because it is such a critical concept that when I'm learning Torah, I get God because Torah is God's will and wisdom, and that is him. As the Rebbe says, Torah and God, as the Zohar says, there's a quote from the Zohar, are absolutely one. You can't say this is where Torah stops and God starts. And therefore, it says in the Zohar. That's why no thought can grasp God at all. Because we can't even grasp this concept. It's beyond any human fathoming. But this is him. So what was gaining by these 3.5 lines? To reinforce what we know. that the Torah starts off as high can be by God himself. As I said before, Torah is rooted in God's essence and being, what we refer to as his atzmos, meaning Torah is not a level of creation. It's a manifestation of the creator. And this manifestation of the creator himself goes all the way down, level upon level. We're talking about atzmos, essence of God, higher than anything. And then it just descends into creation. And then all those levels of creation higher than world that we don't talk about in Tanya, because it's not our practical, relevant reality. And Tanya is all about working. It's all about things relevant to our avodah, our service of God. And then it goes through all those 4 layers of worlds that we know of and discuss. The world of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, the world of being, the world of creation, the world of formation, the world of descent. And it keeps going because it gets into our physical reality. And from this high point of literally coming from God's essence and being, she travels. She goes all the way down the many layers. The secret, the mystery of how she descends layer upon layer, level upon level of God's reality. Like, how could this be? How is it possible for God's will and wisdom to go down like this? Right. That's what the Rebbe is saying. This is the mystery of these steps of layer upon layer of descent upon descent upon descent. And it keeps going because being all the way descended into spirituality is not low enough. No, we got to get to planet Earth. Madrega lemadrega, from level to level, bishtalshlos ha'olamos, through all the progressions of the worlds, right? We say we have all of Torah from the primordial constriction until we get to the first concept of world. And then we have 4 levels of spiritual worlds. But that's not enough. It does get down here to us. The progression of worlds, ad shenislapsha bidvarim gashmiyim, until Torah becomes in garb. Do you imagine God's will and wisdom, his primordial will and wisdom, his will and wisdom that exists within him before the first constriction, and that gets engarbed in physicality, in possessions, in a clod of earth, all the laws that have to do with planting, in a piece of garment, all the laws that have to do with fabric and with materials and with clothing, with a piece of food, with all of this physical stuff in Yane Olam Haza, all the matters of this world, not just the stuff of this world, but what humans do with that stuff, which a lot of times is in a very negative direction. Shem Rov Mitzvos HaTorah Kekulam, which is the high majority of the commandments, Vilchosehem, and in all the details of the laws, Ubetzirufei Oisius Gashmias, with the formation of physical letters, B'diyo al HaSefer, ink on parchment, like as physical as we could get. God's will and wisdom has now become ink. Esrim v'arba asfarim, the 24 books, Shebetorah Nevi'im V'Ksuvim, of scriptures, of Tanakh. First the Rebbe said, look how high. And now the Rebbe is saying, look how low. How low in form, ink, parchment, letters, words. It's 24 specific books with a certain number, precise number of verses, of words in each verse, of letters in each verse. It's as finite as you can get. That's the structure. That's the form. And what about the content? The content's all about physicality. What's Torah about? The physical stuff of this world. Now, it's interesting. Someone once asked Lubavitcher Rebbe, this was probably like in the 60s, where we had, of course, the space race and is there life on another planet was a very big thing. And someone's asked the Rebbe, could there be life on another planet? And the Rebbe responded, something I thought was fascinating. The Rebbe said there might be life, but there can't be intelligent life. There might be some, simple celled organisms, but there can't be intelligent life. And the Rebbe gave a very interesting reason why. Why can't there be intelligent life? Because the Rebbe said life without Torah has no purpose. There's no point. There's no existence to life if you don't have Torah, right? We're coming from Shavuos. Think of all the themes of Shavuos, the most basic ideas we have all the way in Genesis, right? In the very beginning of creation, where it says that it was the 6th day, right? The 6th day of creation. doesn't say day 6. It says the 6th day, Hashishi. And why does it say the? It didn't say the 5th day, the 4th day. But why is it the 6th day? This is alluding that God told creation, listen, we got a condition here. In about 2,500 years, I'm going to offer the Jews the Torah. If they accept, you're good. If they don't accept, you become nothingness. Because there's no point to creation without Jews keeping Torah. Now, we accept it. It says when we accept it, the world relaxed. It knew it was existing. Why is there no point? Because our existence is for a purpose. The purpose of existence, we have it all laid out. We don't have to have these existential questions. We know all the answers. The purpose of existence is, I was created to serve my creator. That's the purpose of existence. That's the purpose of human existence, of our existence. Is the purpose of the existence of every plant, of every animal, of every bug, of every clod of earth, of every piece of plastic. The purpose of existence is to serve the creator. And we only can serve the creator with Torah, because Torah tells us how. Torah is our roadmap. That's why Torah was given on Shabbos. Our sages disagree on a lot of things, but they all agree Torah was given on Shabbos, because Shabbos brings peace to the world. Torah brings peace to the world, because when you know your purpose, when you know your why, you can handle all the what's. When you know the why of creation, I am created to serve my creator, now we can move and do it. And therefore, for there to be intelligent life, there has to be Torah. And the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe didn't say this whole side thing I said to explain the concept, the Rebbe said, and as Torah is written, it only works on this physical world. Torah is very specific to planet Earth. So to envision another world with intelligent life without Torah, there'd be no purpose. There's no point. So it wouldn't be. To envision another planet with intelligent life with our Torah, it wouldn't work. Torah only works with the exact specific physical dimensions of this planet. To envision intelligent life with a different Torah, God said, no, there's only one Torah. This is it. So therefore, the Rebbe said, life there might be, but intelligent life, no. Intelligent life is only here, because only here do we have ability to actualize God's purpose in all of creation, that his will and wisdom be expressed, and we make this world his home. And therefore, the infinity of God's will and wisdom came into the finite structure of Torah, ink on parchment, the letters, the words, the verses, the book, and the finite, physical, limited concepts of Torah, the content of Torah, physicality, and many negative situations. Why did God do all that? Kidei shetehe kol machshava tfesa behen. So every thought can grasp him. And not only can we grasp God in our thoughts, we can go even lower. Even in our speech, we can grasp God. Even in our actions, we can grasp God. And obviously, speech, and how much more so action, is far lower than thought. But even there, we can grasp God. We can be engarbed in them, because when we study, speak, live Torah, my soul is within Torah. And since Torah and her commandments are engarbing all the 10 powers of the soul, the whole Taryag Evareha, if you remember, we said this before, that the soul has 613 limbs, 613 components. So all the 613 limbs of the soul, Me'roisha va'ad ragla, from her head to her foot. No, your soul doesn't have a head and your soul doesn't have a foot. But it means from the highest level of the soul to the lowest level of the soul. All of these aspects of soul, from the highest, most sublime level of soul until the lowest level of soul, they're all wrapped up in a living bond with God, literally. Literally, the light of God surrounds, encompasses the soul from her head to her foot. If we could just envision this cocoon, we are cocooned within God's space right now. Every time we learn, every time we fulfill, we are absolutely cocooned within the light of God. Moshe Kasuv, as is written, and here the Rebbe brings two proofs to express this concept. Suri echsebo, my rock, I take protection in him. Bo, literally, in it, in him. Within that rock, I have protection. It's like, again, it's like it's surrounding me. Viksiv, and it's written, Katsina Ratzon Tachrenu. Like a shield, his will encompasses me. Again, you say, well, the shields only protect me on one level. No, this is a round shield. Because we're saying, like a shield, his will is surrounding me. I'm within it. I'm protected by it. I'm in guard. And what is this? This is literally God's will and wisdom, which are engarbed in the Torah and her commandment. So what the Rebbe is telling us here is this most incredible concept. Simple concept. We all understand it. But incredible concept. Incredible that it's a literal truth. It's not said to make us feel good. It's not said to make us feel important. It's not said to motivate us. It's the truth. The truth is, the Creator, in all his infinity, makes himself within the finite thoughts and actions of Torah and the commandments because he loves us this much and wants us this much. Because when I study Torah and my mind is grasping it, when I speak Torah, when I speak words from Torah, when I say the blessings and the prayers and the psalms of Torah, my mouth is connecting. When I do all the actions of life as a Jew, my whole body is connecting. And every part of me invested in Torah, it's like that part is full of the glow of God, literally to the degree the Rebbe says, it's wrapping you up. You're enveloped in it. You are within and part of that energy. And that energy isn't a pale glow of, a diminishment of. That energy is God's essence and being. No, of course, that's who I am. I'm a godly soul. Just as Torah is rooted in God's essence and being, so am I, so is the soul. But I've left that, as has Torah, to come down here. So when I am within Torah, the words of Torah, the thoughts of Torah, the actions of Torah, I'm within my origin. I'm at that space of God's essence and being. And the Rebbe says, with all of this, we could answer a perplexing Mishnah, a perplexing sentence, statement, concept in Ethics of the Fathers, in Pirkei Avos. Now, you could say all of this was to answer a Mishnah. No. All of this was to explain the concept. But through explaining these concepts, we can answer this query, this question on Ethics of the Fathers. And the application there is helping us further understand these concepts. So what's the Mishnah? What's the statement? What's our question? What's the answer? So in Ethics of the Father, it says something which, like a lot of things in Torah, if you don't think about it, it doesn't bother you. But if you think about it, it bothers you. It says that 1 hour in this world of serving God is better than the entire life in the world to come. The world to come meaning the afterlife, what we call generally Gan Eden, the heavenly abode of the souls, the bliss of the souls, while they're waiting for us to get our act together and bring Mashiach, as they're basking in God's rays. 1 hour of service here is better than all the years as souls are waiting up there, all the years of their reward. And why this Mishnah, why this statement is so puzzling is, wait a minute, that's the reward, right? Some people, their whole service is very reward-centric, and they're working for that reward. And you're saying 1 hour of work is better than a lifetime of reward. That does not sound like very good reward, but it is reward. Yes, it is reward. But down here is better. Yes, down here is better. Yes, there is reward. What's going on? So the Rebbe says, if you understand all these concepts, it's very simple. Our world, we just said at length, is the world where we and God's essence and being touch, where we and God's essence and being become one, exclusively in our world, exclusively when a Jew does a commandment, when a Jew studies Torah, only within that box, within the paradigm of Torah and her commandments, a soul and God's essence and being become one. That's what happens every time I'm doing divine work. That's amazing. It is. It's better than any reward, actually. But there's a downside. The downside is, and we don't feel a thing. Like right now, we are fulfilling a commandment. We are studying Torah. We are doing actually the strongest commandment that binds us with God. Nothing binds us with God as much as learning Torah. We're doing it right now. And not only that, but we're learning about God himself. So that's like the deepest bond. And we don't feel a thing. And actually, the fact that we don't feel a thing is what allows us to be. In other words, if we felt what our soul is at this second experiencing, we would die. Plain and simple, we would die. We would cease to exist. We could never handle it. How do I know we could never handle it? Because no creation can handle it. Which is why, besides souls on planet Earth, souls and bodies that are completely clueless, nothing on any level of creation can ever experience God's essence and being. Impossible, because they would cease to exist. So what do they experience? Well, they experience what in Hebrew we call giluyin, revelations of godly light. Remember, we said the souls above in the Garden of Eden and the Gan Eden and the heavenly afterlife are basking in the divine rays, the glow of all they accomplished in serving God, all that light. Light we could get, but not the source of light, not God himself, only the light that emanates. Remember we said before about the sun and the rays 93 million miles away? So that sun, no way, it would burn everything up. But the rays, safely 93 million miles away, that we can enjoy. So when the sages said, 1 hour of service of God is better than an eternity of the world to come, they weren't knocking the reward we're getting. They were explaining the value of this world. In this world, only God and I are one. God, an essence and being of God. Not meaning a ray of God, a dimension of God, a glow of God, the light of God. No, God, his essence and being, Atzmos, and me, and you. Absolutely one with God whenever we do Torah mitzvahs. Only possible in this world when we are serving God. That's why this world is yafeh. It's better. But the next world is still reward. Because reward is what you feel. Reward is what you enjoy. Reward is what you appreciate. And in this world, you're not feeling, enjoying, or appreciating the connection to the essence and being of God. Like I said, if you felt it, you would cease to exist. Might feel inspired. You might feel, wow, but you don't feel God's essence and being because you would cease to exist. So this world is yafeh. This world is better, finer. This world, the soul of the Jew and the being and essence of God are one. But the next world is still the reward. Because even though it's a far diminished pleasure, it's basking in the rays of God's energy. It's a pleasure because we feel it. So it's a pleasure. We feel it. It's reward. But now we're getting the real thing. That's one reason this world is yafeh, as the sages say in Pirkei Avos and Ethics of the Fathers. It's finer. It's also finer for other reasons, like only here can you give to God, right? All the souls in the afterlife, they can receive, as I said, they're basking in the rays and the glow of the divine light that they were part of, that they helped elicit by their service in this world. But they can't give God anything. Only we, souls and bodies, can actually give to God. And that's a real giving. It's not a fake giving. This isn't like a laboratory experiment. This is real. So this world is yafeh because God and we are one. And this world is yafeh. It's finer because here we truly give to God. And as I said, this world is unique because only here can we experience God's essence and being. And we said the reason we can experience it here is because you don't feel it. And in any other higher spiritual reality, we would feel it and therefore could not have it because it would be so overwhelming that we would cease to exist. But here, since we don't feel it, we get it. Okay, let me quickly read it. V'lachein amru, and therefore our sages said, this is the quote. This is from Ethics of the Fathers. It's yafeh. It's finer. 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world, 1 hour of serving God, from the entirety of the life of a soul in the world to come. Whenever we have the term world to come, it could mean either the redemption, or it could mean the spiritual afterlife until the redemption. Here it means the spiritual afterlife until the redemption, what we usually call Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, not meaning the physical place that was on physical planet and earth, but a spiritual reality where the souls are waiting for Mashiach to come. Because Olam Haba, that afterlife, is where we benefit, we enjoy the rays of the divine presence. Shutainu Kasaga, which is an enormous pleasure. It's a delight in grasping God that we feel, and it's better than any pleasure this world can offer. And it's possible for any creation, even the most supernal beings, lahasig, to grasp God, to feel God, to have pleasure in God. Only a ray from the light of God can be experienced by a creation, and it still sustain itself and not cease to exist. And that's why it's called a ray of the divine presence. Because if it was anything bigger than a ray, it would blow us out completely and we wouldn't be able to survive. But God, in his essence and being, no thought can grasp God at all. If we grasped him, we felt it, we would cease to exist. To me, these are from the most impactful words, if not the most impactful words of the entire Tanya, in my personal emotional relationship. Only as he can be grasped and engarbed in Torah and her commandments, then, truly then, he is grasped in them. And truly engarbed in God himself, because God and Torah are one. So all of this, that we uniquely can literally grasp Hashem. So we said, just to recap, this world, get the very essence of being in God every time we serve Torah mitzvahs, and don't feel a thing, which is advantageous, so to speak, because if we felt, we would cease to exist. That's why we can have the experience. We can't feel the experience. We can have the experience. Because again, if we felt it, we couldn't have it, but we don't feel it, so we can have it. So we have God's essence and being, and we do not feel the experience. In the afterlife, we do not get God's essence and being. No. We would cease to exist. We get rays of God's energy. We feel those rays and enjoy it, and it feels amazing. It's better than any pleasure. The concept of pleasure of this world is that glow from God's rays. So God himself, absolutely not only a ray, but unlike this world, we feel it. It feels great. It's reward. And of course, the ultimate synergy is Mashiach. Because by Mashiach, we have the advantage of this world, getting God's essence and being, and we have the advantage of Gan Eden, of the afterlife, feeling and experiencing it. Because the fabric of creation will change, and that's what our service is doing, actually. We have changed the fabric of creation, that we can contain God's essence and being, feel and experience God's essence and being, and continue, and exist as human beings, and exist on planet Earth. And that's only possible by the redemption, being one with God's essence and being, and feeling that experience.